everyone to our electronic council meeting on October 20th, 2021. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Regional Council is practicing physical distancing. I am present in the chambers along with Councillors Galloway, Jowett, Kiefer, and Shantz, and all other members are participating electronically. I would like to acknowledge the land on which we gather virtually today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions with our community. What I have learned in walking with Indigenous people is that our relationship with the land should be one of stewardship and not ownership, and I am honored to make this walk with them. I'll now turn to the clerk for roll call.
Thanks, Chair. Chair Redman.
Present.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Erb.
Present.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Galloway.
Present.
Councillor Harris. Councillor Jaworski.
Here.
Councillor Jowett.
Here.
Councillor Kiefer.
Here.
Councillor McGarry.
Present.
Councillor Nowak.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Strickland.
Here.
Councillor Verbenovic.
Present.
And we have regrets from Councillor Rentz.
Thank you, Will. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, relating to item 3 on the summary of recommendations to Council emergency shelter funding, I'm declaring an indirect pecuniary conflict of interest due to my employment with the YW.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. That is duly noted. Our first presentation, our first agenda item is the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group, and co-chairs Donna, Dubie, and Maedith Radlein are going to present. So I will turn the floor over to you, to Donna and Maedith, and thank you for coming to present.
Thank you very much, Karen. We appreciate this opportunity to come to Council and to share our thoughts. Both Donna and I are going to be speaking to the recommendations. But before I start by introducing it, I'd just like to ask for an amendment. There is the list of members who are unanimous in its support of the report, and I'd like to amend it by removing Tammy Webster's name. She was absent from the vote, and we would like to reflect that accurately.
That is duly noted. Maedith, go ahead.
Thank you. So, good evening, everyone, and you gave the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group a mandate, and our mandate was to work with the region in terms of breaking down systemic barriers and creating an organization that was anti-racist in its policies and in its procedures. The recommendations we present this evening identify what needs to be done, how it will be done, and the cost, because there are no figures or estimates in these recommendations. That is the job of the region. And that how needs to be determined in ongoing and continuous consultation with community groups. So this needs to be an initiative that seeks and makes a priority community engagement. So we are working towards an anti-racist organization, and this means that the region needs to listen to voices. It means that the region needs to listen, needs to move away from structures where people at the top decide what's good for everybody. They need to listen, they need to learn, they need to work together, and they need to implement. So Donna is going to speak to hiring practices and regional funding. And then when she has done so, I will address the mental health and emergency response and the positions of Director of Reconciliation, Diversity and Inclusion. So Donna, your turn.
Thank you, Maedith. So as Maedith mentioned, best practices data support the fact that a diverse workplace is necessary to create an anti-racist working environment. Historically, the region of Waterloo has lacked leadership and staffing at all levels of employment. Staffing surveys will reveal evidence that the staffing complement requires more diversity. So the recommendations that we have in the hiring practices are by the end of the year, 2022, the region of Waterloo's Human Resource Department must implement policies to hold equivalent other methods of experience education beyond the current practice of only accepting formalized education degrees and certificates. This includes acknowledging that within Indigenous communities, life experience, community connections, and other ways of knowledge are integral to the culture and must be highly valued by the region. Addressing the issue of equivalence or non-Canadian qualifications and working to understand the value international accreditation. Creating a hiring policy that actively seeks out the lived experience and community-based work of BIPOC communities as accepted qualifications. Create targeted hiring practices to increase the amount of BIPOC staff at the region of Waterloo. A, the current system is not accessible to certain populations and must be amended to improve accessibility to the process from start to finish. B, set hiring targets so that A, the demographic makeup of the region's staff is directly and proportionately reflective of the ethnic population of the region of Waterloo. Updating this target on an ongoing basis as census information is gathered. B, underrepresented and intersectionally marginalized groups such as Indigenous and Black communities are given priority for specific roles. This is an immediate need as the status quo breeds violence against Indigenous and Black identities and thus excludes them from the workplace. C, the region of Waterloo must commit to completing a staff census every 2 years to determine growth patterns and gaps or achievements. Thank you very much. Edith, you're next.
Maedith, you're on mute.
Sorry, I keep forgetting this on-off business. So, thank you, Donna. I don't know if people, want to question us as we go or want to wait to the end. But basically what Donna has just spoken to is the fact that hiring practices currently tend to be what I will call, for want of a better word, Eurocentric. They look for specific qualifications and life experiences. And in a region as diverse as this, it's really clear that, there is no norm when it comes to life experiences. There are numerous life experiences. I am Black. There may be somebody else who is Black sitting beside me. It does not mean we have the same life experience. And so we need to recognize that not just the diversity of Waterloo region, but the diversity that exists within the various ethnic and cultural and communities in the region. So to go to mental health and emergency response. In recent years, racializing of individuals and especially those in mental health distress have disproportionately resulted in death or injury by police officers. And this is something that's very much in the news. I would like at this point to mention too that these recommendations we bring forth are going to improve the lives of everyone, not just BIPOC communities. But these are instances where racialized communities are targeted. And so in this recommendation, what we are saying is that there needs to be the funding of resources and the provision of staff to ensure that all emergency responses that have to do with mental health are responded to appropriately. When somebody is dead or injured, it's too late. That's not the time to think about, oh, we should have done this, or oh, why don't we have this? So our recommendation is that the region of Waterloo must create and implement non-police-based responses to mental health crises. Should a police presence be required, officers on site should be unarmed and serve as support, not as the primary intervener for de-escalation. And this would involve the formation of crisis intervention teams with specially trained health and crisis response professionals, including mental health nurses where necessary. Such teams must be a collaboration between the Waterloo Region Police Service, public health, and local health-focused nonprofits that have a proven track record of working positively in BIPOC communities. Again, we highlight BIPOC communities because these are the communities that are being targeted. This is where we are having young people losing their lives. Response should include wraparound care, such as training for emergency dispatch responders, training for all staff involved in emergency response, follow-up care, and mental health supports. And so immediate training needs to be provided for relevant nonprofit staff and all current first responders, including police, so that teams can be formed in a timely manner to prevent responses with force, weapons, or intimidation. Data must be reviewed on an ongoing basis to ensure that there are enough teams available for response. Lives should not be risked by having untrained people respond at any time. We need to ensure that we have the number of staff that we need to respond. This is a matter of life or death. Donna, regional funding.
Yes. So number one, the regional funding for Indigenous initiatives must be offered only to Indigenous organizations. Funding should not be allocated to mainstream organizations which do not represent the Indigenous community at large. To bypass Indigenous organizations when seeking solutions to social issues is the systemic racism. It's very important that the funding comes directly to the Indigenous organizations. In the past, there's been many non-mainstream organizations, non-Indigenous organizations that received the funding just because of the wording that they could potentially put in there about potentially hiring on an Indigenous person, and then it never happens. We know best about what our issues are and how important it is for us to do this work within our community. Number two, the region, in consultation with Indigenous organizations, must actively advocate for all federal funding available for Indigenous initiatives and ensure that it is provided to Indigenous service providers. There are existing organizations such as KW Urban Native Wigwam, the Healing of the Seven Generations, Anishinaabe Outreach, the Land Back, and White Owl Native Ancestry, which should be consulted at all stages of this process. I also want to talk about the recommendations for the space for Indigenous groups and how imperative it is for by the end of 2021, the region of Waterloo must be in consistent and ongoing consultation with Indigenous organizations about the availability of community space. There needs to be respectful dialogue in a process that is Indigenous-led. Over the years, there have been several opportunities for conversation, but at this point, we are only in conversation. There has nothing that has been done for action in this regard. Thank you. Maedith?
Thanks, Donna. I would like to say that thank you to the councillors, the regional government, for acknowledging the need for the existence of the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group and the need to have the Office of Director, Reconciliation, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. It speaks to the fact that you recognize that change needs to happen. It speaks to the fact that you recognize that historically the region has not met the needs of all its residents. So you are to be commended for this action. And the posting for the Director of Reconciliation, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion went out, I think, about a month ago. And our recommendation is that this should not be one position. There should be a Director of Reconciliation and a Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Reconciliation is not the same as equity, diversity, and inclusion. And somebody with the lived experience of, that could address issues of equity and diversity and inclusion may not have the lived experience of reconciliation. And I think one of the things that Donna hinted at in terms of when we look at hiring, if you're hiring in terms of cultural initiatives talking about reconciliation or equity, then you need to be looking to people who have the lived experience. Having a master's in race relations does not necessarily mean that you understand the communities that you are going to be expected to work with. And so our recommendation is that there are two equal positions, and our recommendation is that they report to the Chief Administrator of the region of Waterloo. It's important that both directors work with both the CAO and the Chief of Communications and Strategy Officer. However, they must be answerable only to the CAO. Communications is tasked with ensuring that the region has a positive public image. The Director of Reconciliation and the Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion will be tasked with system change. And this may mean that difficult, non-complimentary messages are going to be communicated to the public. The separation is necessary and vital to maintaining the integrity of these positions. It's important that if change needs uncomfortable conversations, and it is critical to the process that these conversations not be filtered and that the narrative not be slanted to give favorable impressions to people or the organization. This work is going to strengthen the region. It's just going to strengthen our community. If any one group in this community is strengthened, the whole community is strengthened. And so we ask that Council look at these recommendations favorably and approve them. Thank you. Donna, did you have something to say?
Nope, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there are any questions or comments.
Thank you both so much on behalf of the working advisory group to bring these very important recommendations on these very important issues to Council's attention. Council, I'm going to recognize everybody who has their hand up. I just want to caution that there was a delegation that registered at the last moment, and we will hear them after Council has asked questions and made comments. It probably is preferable if we hold any motions until after we hear the delegation, but I am in Council's hands. So, Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through the chair. Well done. I wholeheartedly agree. It should have been done maybe 50 years ago. I'm glad we're finally moving forward. I just have one question, and excuse my ignorance. We talk about hiring, and how do we tell what an individual is? Like looking at me, you can't tell my ancestry. You don't know if I am Black or Indigenous. So how do we tell? Because you're not allowed to ask it on an application form, right?
Yes.
Does it? You can now?
Yes.
Family?
Donna and Maedith are saying yes.
Yeah, you can ask somebody to self-identify. And just to respond to that, if you're hiring somebody, for example, to lead reconciliation or to lead equity, diversity, and inclusion, and if your posting says that it wants somebody with lived experience and someone who uses that experience to implement change, then you need to ask the question. You need to ask people to self-identify, and the answer is yes or no. If you are saying to someone that a part of your qualification is lived experience, and they say, I'm not going to tell you, well, in my view, they have not met that qualification, and so they are not, they are not suitable for the position.
Donna, did you want to add anything?
Yes, I think how imperative it is to request somebody to self-identify if you have a position open for an Indigenous individual. There's status, non-status, First Nation, Métis, Inuit. People from the Inuit communities, they don't have a status, they have what's called a beneficiary. Anybody who has this in their background, in their ancestry, will not have an issue to provide you with the information that you need to suggest that this person is of Indigenous background. If they do not have a status, there is non-status individuals out there. There is not a problem to get information from a community that they were involved with, a Native organization. There's all kinds of ways to get your identification for your job. If somebody's going to really put forth a heavy foot to say they are not going to give you the information that you're requesting, I find more and more those are the individuals who do not possess any ancestry whatsoever. It is imperative for our community to recognize our community members in those positions. And there's many individuals that bounce from community to community who don't have any ancestry whatsoever that fill the positions within the region, the city, a hospital, an education system, justice system. And it's starting to be well known at this point in time, the amount of individuals that sit in Indigenous positions who have no entitlement or ancestry whatsoever. So you do have the right to ask an individual. It's nothing about guessing what your identity is. You'd be respectful and ask the individual to provide the information that you're requesting to prove that they have ancestry. That's all that it is.
Okay, thank you. I was not aware of that. I thought it was one of those things like you can't ask age, you can't ask male, female, you can't. So I thought it was another thing you weren't allowed to ask.
Any further? Okay, thank you, Councillor Foxton. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks Thanks to the committee, really, for what must have been a huge job. People have been waiting a long time for this report, some with excitement and anticipation, others, I'm sure, with some trepidation. So I know that must have been a huge amount of pressure. And I was very excited to see it. And thank you for recommendations that are so comprehensive, but also very clear. I think that that's so helpful. I have a bunch of questions, but I'll just ask one because I can see a whole bunch of other hands up. And I think it's probably a question for Donna. Donna, with regard to identifying space to give back to Indigenous people for whatever uses are appropriate, I know that this is a discussion that's happening at a lot of different municipalities. Would you say that that it would be preferable to have multiple spaces in different municipalities, or is it better for the community to have, one or two specifically? What would you consider that people would find ideal?
Well, having multiple spaces is currently what we are in right now within this region. There's 4 main organizations in the community, and there's several hubs off of the education and training or health field. So there's smaller hubs in the region. If we had one big space where everybody could come together, if that's what they choose, it's entirely up to the organization, then we could provide a one-stop shop for our community members to come in and get the services that they really need, and have many services available for our community, like have a space for a nurse practitioner to come and visit, have a space for a dentist. We could have a space for a vet. We could have a huge clothes closet. We need to have a place, a big kitchen, a place to have our socials. So my thought personally is to have a big, huge one-stop shop. But everybody in the community is going to have their own opinion. So right now, I know working in the downtown core for 20 plus years, actually, that it's better serviced our community because they can take the bus downtown and walk up to the organization. Transportation is kind of sparse in our community, so we need to be available for them, within walking distance. So that's why I'm thinking one space would help the community.
Okay, that's helpful. And if I may, just a comment about Councillor Foxon's question. This whole idea, this whole situation of pretendians taking grants and jobs and things like that, claiming to be Indigenous but actually having no lived experience. I've been reading a great deal about this, and I know that a lot of communities are now saying it's not enough for you to self-identify. You have to have a community claim you, and that would be something that I'm assuming the region would want to have happen as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Galloway.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions, but I do have a few comments, Madam Chair. The first is I want to thank Maedith and Donna for leading the discussion at the directorate, and of course all the members that participated and have endorsed this particular report, and thank them very much for the hard work that's gone into this. There's a couple things that I want to particularly note and appreciate from the report, and then, Madam Chair, I will, whenever is appropriate, make a motion later on. But I think Maedith said it very well at the beginning of her presentation that we need to get away from the top-down structures. We need to get the actual implementation of these initiatives at the community level. And we need to stop trying to be all things to all people. We need to get the money and the resources to those that are best positioned to work on these particular initiatives. So I really, really appreciate that. And that's, of course, evidenced in this report in a couple different ways. The hiring practices, clearly that's something that we should be able to turn our mind to. The equivalent qualifications, making sure that we're reflective of local demographics in our internal operations is obviously very, very important. The one area that's of particular interest to me, not that none are of interest to me, but of particular interest to me was the mental health, because this dovetails very well with the initiative that we put forward, or the motion that we put forward during the budget process last year, where we want to look at an alternate delivery model for crisis mental health services, and getting away from the police model. So very, very supportive of that in terms of what we can do locally, whether it's in conjunction with the Ministry of Health or whoever we should be getting funding for that from, or wherever. The other thing I wanted to mention is the uncomfortable conversations that we're likely going to get involved in. And I really appreciate that being in the report, and I'm prepared, I think, for those uncomfortable conversations that won't always reflect on us positively, and rightly so. We've not always done, and maybe often have not done, the best that we could do, and those conversations have to be had. And they may make us uncomfortable, but that's part of the process to get to the better side of this particular issue. So very supportive of the and thankful of the report. And Madam Chair, when appropriate, I'd like to make the motion to refer this to staff for an implementation report.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway, and I will circle back to you. Appreciate those comments, and with the Council's indulgence, we will hear all the speakers and then listen to the delegation, and I will come back to you. Councillor Ravanovich.
Thanks very much, Redman, and Maedith and Donna. I too wanted to offer my thanks to the two of you for your leadership, and to the rest of the group for what I no doubt been many hours of work getting to the point of this report, and the many thoughtful recommendations that are in here, and that are going to require all of us to roll up our sleeves over the coming months and beyond to get some to advance this important work. I do have a few questions for you that I did want to ask, and one of the things you've noted in the report, and Councillor Galloway just referenced, is there will be difficult conversations at times. I know in our own council we've referenced the notion that at times the apple cart will be upset as a result of the change that needs to occur. But one of the things I've also learned in terms of dealing with social change is the challenge of bringing the community along with us, and the importance of that, because at the end of the day, in advancing this work, we can only go as far as the community permits us to go, and based on the trust and respect that's built over time. And so I guess my question to you is, as you've developed these recommendations and so on, has there been a certain amount of outreach that's happened thus far, or is this the work of the committee, and as it goes to staff now, we think there's some broader outreach to the community that's necessary?
So I will start off, and Donna, if you want to pitch in afterwards.
Thank you.
So our committee worked very closely with the region for equitable vaccine distribution. And during the model that was used then of community engagement proved to be very successful in terms of reaching communities in terms of vaccine uptake, but also in terms of communication. And what we learned then was that the community, and when I say the community, I'm not just talking about BIPOC people, I'm talking about everyone, regardless of your color, appreciates communication that reaches them. So we often communicate in one way, whether it be, through a website or whatever, but not everybody accesses information in the same way. So one of the things the region learned was that if you are disseminating information that's important, such as information about COVID, you need to do it in a variety of ways. How do different groups access information? That's information that you need to have. And if you have that information, then you can access the people you need to access. There were town halls in different languages. There were town halls requested by particular communities to address, issues that they had, myths, mistrust, and so on. So what the region learned was that by reaching out and saying, this is the message that needs to be communicated, how do we do that best? They learned that there's no one answer. To do it best, you do it in a variety of ways, meeting the needs of the many diverse groups that are out there, of all colors, cultures, shapes, and sizes. And so that is the that model informed our recommendation in terms of community engagement, because everybody who lives in Waterloo region wants this to be a safe community where everybody is welcome. And so everyone out there, well, I don't want to say everyone, but most people out there are willing to give of themselves to make things work and to make things better for all. And, there were the indigenous vaccine clinics, and you had the buses still going around areas. So I think there was a lot of learning, Barry, in terms of the vaccine distribution. And also, over the years, there have been many, many, many groups of all cultures and so on who have said continuously, that you need to talk to us. Don't do things for us. Don't do what you think is good for us. Ask us what it is. And that message has been one that's been given for many, many years. But I think this is, it hasn't been listened to. So I think the short answer to your question is that the community would like to be engaged. And I think if you engage the community, then they're the ones, they say these are the issues. This is what needs to be done. So you don't need to do any thinking, because they're telling you what will work and what won't work.
Sure. So if I heard you correctly, these recommendations have come from the working group, but part of what through the work that you've done has really re-emphasized the importance of us continuing to, on this and on other issues, connect with various segments of our community, but to do it in ways that resonate with them, and not just sort of the standard approach that we use, but in fact the large variety of ways that you use the region used through the pandemic, which allowed us to connect with so many more people.
And I wouldn't say ways that resonate with them. I would say ways that validate their experiences and their knowledge and their input.
Okay.
And so the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group represents many lived experiences and many networks within the community. And the recommendations reflect information and questions and so on that we have each received and the networks that we represent.
Donna, did you want to add?
It does
Sorry,
not
Maedith.
represent everybody, because there are always people who are not there. Sorry, I spoke too much, Donna.
No, sorry, Maedith. Donna, I just thought you'd like to respond to Councillor Vanovich too.
I did. I think an awesome example of the region working with the Indigenous community, again through COVID, the region opened up its building for our community to come there and be vaccinated for first and second dose. We had the opportunity to smudge there. The smudge was going all day. There was drumming and singing there. And every time one of our community people came into the building, you could almost see them like just relaxing and feeling comfortable and knowing that their community was in there and that the region supported the community. I thought that was the most successful opportunity of showing how the region worked with the community. That was an awesome time. So right there, you know, with everything, that's how it should be.
Great, thanks.
I think that.
Thanks for that. I have a number of other questions, but maybe so I'll just ask one more because there are other colleagues that have questions as well. And I just wanted to focus in on the suggestions around the mental health and emergency response teams. And this certainly is an important area for me and for our community. And as I read through the recommendations, they seem to, it's pretty clear to me that you're looking for something beyond what's already in place. I know, for example, that there are teams in place where Canadian Mental Health Association nurses do work with Waterloo Regional Police in responding to calls. But, you know, from looking at the recommendations, you're really looking to go beyond that to the next step to not have police response to some of these calls initially, and to have a different type of police response if it is required. Is that, you know, is that articulating what you're looking for?
So Donna, do you want to respond to that? We have 4 more speakers, 2 delegations. I know this is very important, but thank you, Councillor Vanovich. Donna?
Meedith, you can take this one on. This is your baby.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be quick. The answer is yes, Barry. We are looking for you to go beyond. The ones, as you said, certainly exist, but they are not enough, and there are still some responses that where, you know, those kind of personnel are not present, and what is there is not enough. There are still people who are being hurt and by the response, and so yes, we need to go beyond what we already have.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you again to both of you and the whole group for all of your great work.
Donna, that was nicely stick-handled, punting it over to Maedith. Councillor Jaworski, please go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. Certainly a wonderful report by the advisory working group. Certainly the word working is very appropriate, as Councillor Clark has said, a very succinct and detailed and easy to understand report. So thank you for that. I would note that there's certainly a thirst for change in our community, as we know from the Black Lives Matter rally through to September 30th and the march, and the number of people who took part in that, just a sea of people. And there's a thirst in our community, and there's a thirst at the region for change, so that we can be better. And as I know from the working group, there's a lot of experience there with post-secondary institutes and that. And as we think about our post-secondary institutes, and 50,000 of our residents are students there, and there's great great groups at our universities. I just wondered if that had come up during your working group meeting. I realize that this is about the region itself changing. However, there are connections, of course, to various community groups. I wondered if university groups had come up or any commentary on that. Thank you.
Who'd like to take that one?
I will.
But go ahead, Donna. Do you?
No, there's individuals that are involved with the university, but at this time it wasn't a recommendation or any kind of added information specifically from the university. It just was the expertise from the group itself and the lived experience involved with the group. So we haven't touched on any other entities yet. And I'm sure maybe moving forward, we'd be able to do that as well with them.
Maedith, did you want to add anything?
Just to say that starting this month in October, we will have a youth representative on the group. So we are hoping to add that perspective to our discussions.
Wonderful. Thank you both, and thanks to the whole working group.
Thank you. Councillor McGarry. Catherine, are you frozen?
I'm back if you're calling Councillor McGarry. Sorry. I'm going to turn my camera off. That'll help. I also wanted to add my thanks to Maedith and Donna for an excellent report, and really do connect with the comments that Councillor Jaworski made. My question is really regarding the your comment about hiring people and how you can ask a question about their experience. And in particular, you mentioned anybody that may be hiring into the equity, inclusive, diversity role. I looked at my own family where I have family members that represent the BIPOC and Indigenous communities, and nieces and nephews who are descendants of those family members of mine. So my question would be along the lines of questioning when you're looking at sort of a diverse staff and those individuals that may represent other communities or those communities of, BIPOC and Indigenous in particular. Is it appropriate with every interview then, when you're interviewing for staff positions, to investigate if they will self-identify in those interviews? I understand how important it is not just to have equity and diversion staff represent the communities, but I also go to the comment that Donna made about the fact that it's not enough perhaps to self-identify, but you need to be part of that community while we work there. And so my question is, again, how does one then go about requesting during any interview about self-identification of our potential candidates?
Donna, did you want to take this one?
I think for the self-identification piece for the Indigenous community, it's a little bit more broader than if you are interviewing for somebody in our community that's two-spirited, or if somebody's from the Black community, it's, you know, it's visible, like it's whether they're involved with their community or not. They don't necessarily have to provide you with any documentation, because currently the way that things are with the Métis community and communities from north, south, east, and west, Councillor Foxton said it best that you can't tell by looking at anybody if they are Indigenous, or, you know, we have people in our community with red hair and green eyes and fair skin and, you know, blue eyes and blonde hair. So, you know, if they're applying for a position specifically for BIPOC, or then that individual, if somebody was looking for a two-spirited person, I know that
Is Donna frozen?
I think so.
Maedith, do you want to weigh in?
I don't want to speak for Donna, but I think what she, you know, the point she's making is that if you are looking for there are certain positions where lived experience is important. And so in those instances, you want your applicants to be able to show you that, whether it be, I don't know, a letter from a community, but some way of showing you that they have the experience that you're looking for. And you can't know that by looking at them, because, we're all mixed up, and when you look at somebody, that does not tell you who their identity is. But there are ways, and what you're going to be looking for is going to depend on the position. It is going to depend on the role that that person is going to play. So, for example, if you're a director of reconciliation, then you absolutely have to have, indigenous lived experience. But as you diversify your organization, then what you're looking for may change, and so on. Is Donna back yet?
Yes. Thank you, Maedith. Donna is back. Donna, do you want to finish?
I'm sorry. I didn't know I was cut off.
Yeah, you froze.
Oh, geez, I'm so sorry. So I think I just wanted to add in there that, there's people in our community that are two-spirited, who would not, blink an eye to self-identify. But I think the most positions that you would be advertising for in the Indigenous community is where all the faults are happening. So, and that's the only expertise that I can speak on, being an Indigenous woman.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor McGarry, does that end your question?
It really does, and I really thank both of you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jowett. Push your...
Sorry, we need training all over again. So I was going to second Councillor Galloway's.
Okay, we will note that as we move forward. Thank you. Councillor Erb, I had you down as wanting to speak as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was related to the mental illness piece, which has been answered. And so I would just simply say to the group, thank you for this work that you've done for the presentation this evening. And thanks for making us think about some difficult questions and conversations that we're going to have.
Thank you very much. We have a motion, and I'm going to hold the vote until we hear a delegation. This was a last-minute delegation, and as always, I'd like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. Please leave your video camera turned off and your microphone audio muted until you are called on to speak. Today's delegation, because they came in under the wire, has 3 minutes to speak. We'd ask you to leave the meeting once your issue has been addressed, and you're welcome to watch the remainder of the meeting on the live cast on YouTube. I'd also reiterate that if you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate removal from the meeting. That is interrupting councillors, staff, or delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning on your camera at inappropriate times, and any hate or defamatory comments, any hate speech. Randy Dunn requested to speak specifically on the anti-racism working group. Randy, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
You have 3 minutes, Randy.
I'm going to start my video.
You may.
Hello. Good evening, Regional Chair and councillors and all others present. Yeah, I'd like to speak on this anti-racism working group report here. First off, I would like to say that in my opinion, there's only two types of Canadians: immigrants who came by any means, walking boats, air, etc., to come over to Canada because they want to become Canadian. And then we have Native Canadians. And Native Canadians are anybody who was born here. So a Native Canadian might be of Chinese descent, might be of African descent, whatever. They're Native Canadians. That's the two types that we have. Now, throughout this whole thing here, I've heard about the Anti-Racism Advisory Group here, and their mandate was to address the systemic racism. Now, in all of these policies there, they are actually creating policies that are systemically racist. They're creating policies saying that, we want this color of person or this type of person or whatever to be hired because of that reason, because of their color or that. Now, there's a lot of you people that mentioned, and a lot of the councillors, pardon me, had mentioned earlier about, a Waterloo region has never done this type of thing before and whatnot. Well, I've lived in Waterloo region for 64 years now. And back in the 70s and 80s, this same type of hiring process was put into place. And it was put into place when we first brought in new immigrants into Canada, where we are trying to embellish immigration into Canada and bring the people in. Now, if you look at this report here, and you look at, I have a piece of paper here from the land back camp. What is this all about? This was when they took and they took the lands at Victoria Park. And if you look at their demands in this and their recommendations in here, they're pretty much identical. In this one here, they wanted X number of jobs with pay. They want to advise everybody on what's going on for them. Everything is like that. It's all for them. I thought that we lived in a community that was one community, as a whole, that we're all one, and that we should be looking out for each other. I see anti-racism signs all over the place where they're including diversity. I have never seen one that included a person like me. I've seen signs that went up and they said, well, we want to get a white get-together. And all I heard was stuff about, I think they called it white supremacist. And I didn't understand that. Somebody said, well, yeah, it could have been a white supremacist group, but it was just the way it was all about. As soon as the sign went up, instead of giving somebody a chance. Now, you said you're prepared to hear some hard stuff. And I would really like to give you a whole earful of hard stuff. But unfortunately, in 3 minutes, but I do think, as far as the policing goes, that an anti-racism advisory working group should let the policing be to the police department. I don't think that there's any officer that would want to go into a situation where he has 15 whatever use, doesn't matter what color they are, green, yellow, purple, black, it doesn't really matter.
Randy,
he's not going to want to go in there and try to talk them down.
Randy, sorry, you're
Right?
out of time.
So,
Do you want to just make a concluding statement?
Okay, my completing statement is I totally disagree with this. And I think if you're going to go ahead with this, what you're doing is you're setting up a different systemic racist hiring practice, for one, because it doesn't sound like you're going to do this with everybody. You're not going to hire people off the corner here, the white guys who are begging with their beside their tents on the expressway ramps. Okay, I know you're not going to offer them the same thing. So offer it to everybody, or don't offer it at all. And as far as the land goes that they want you to pay for and me to pay for, like any other group, they can put in and apply for it and get what they need for our community.
Thank you, Randy.
Lands. Or buy it.
Thanks for your concluding statement. Council, are there any questions of the delegation? Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to Councillor Galloway for his motion, and then to Councillor Jowett if she wants to speak to it. Councillor Clark, did you want to comment?
I did want to comment on the motion. I'm not sure if I should, if this is the appropriate time.
Do you want to hear Councillor Galloway's motion before you comment?
That's probably the best approach, yes.
Okay, Councillor Galloway, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we formally receive the report from the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group and refer it to staff for an implementation report.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, did you want to comment? Do you want to propose an amendment?
Yeah, I think I do want to propose an amendment. Just bearing in mind the delegation's points about the importance of consulting. I'm all for sending this back to staff for a report. I think we need something. We need a bit more of a roadmap. But what I want to know is how will staff consult with the affected groups in order to bring back this report? Is that something that they will do with the advisory committee, or is there some other mechanism?
So are you okay, Councillor Clark, if we make that part of the report coming back where they will outline what that kind of consultation would look like?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Jowett, as a seconder, I'm assuming that you and Councillor Galloway are amenable. That's a friendly amendment. And Councillor Jowett, did you want to speak to it?
No, just thank all the delegations for coming forward.
Mike.
Sorry, we need training when we come back to council, but thank you very much for the report, and thank you for the hard work, because it has taken a long time to present the report, and I know there was a lot of work done in the community. And I have to admit, I know that council was very proud of the work that happened in engaging the entire community with regard to the COVID vaccination and some of the other things that were discussed earlier. So thank you for being a part of that and making it easier for us to do a smooth rollout. So yes, I will second Councillor Galway's motion quite happily, along with Councillor Clark's amendment.
Thank you. And if I could just make an observation, and I think this probably speaks a little bit to some of the points that Councillor Bravanovich brought up, and that's that this has always been a community-led initiative, recognizing that systemic racism does exist within the region and within our community, and we will not be perfect and we won't go fast enough, but we will make sure that this journey is something that we bring the whole community along with. So, Council, I would now ask you to use your voting icons to vote yes or no. This will be referred to staff and brought back. That is carried, colleagues. Thank you. And again, Maedith and Donna, thank you so much for the report, for your leadership, for the circle and the advisory group, and all the deliberations that you had, as well as answering all of our questions so fulsomely. The next delegation is Mifrah Abid, Program Coordinator, Coalition of Muslim Women of Kitchener, Waterloo, and this is regarding recommendations to counter Islamic phobia and also about Islamic History Month. So, welcome. Mifrah, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to ask whether I can share my screen, or will the clerk be sharing the screen?
Please go ahead. You can.
Okay. Can you just give me a minute? I'll just put it. Okay. I don't know why it's not sharing. I'm sorry. I'm experiencing some technical difficulty.
We did not receive your presentation, correct?
No, I had sent it. Can you just give me 1 minute?
I really am sorry. We're not seeing it here. Oh.
Is it not
now you're
visible
screen
yet?
sharing.
Oh, I'm not allowed to share?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay. I just want to say a very good evening to everybody. Some of you have already heard from me in the past few days. We've been going to all of the individual councils with our recommendations. I represent the Together Against Islamophobia program by the Coalition of Muslim Women, and we are committed to countering Islamophobia and racism in the Waterloo region. I just want to remind everybody why we are here, that 4 people died this summer in a very tragic murder, which was motivated by Islamophobia, when a person thought he was fueled with so much hate that he thought it was okay to just kill an entire family here. And I just want to bring the council's attention that all identities and all groups do not have the same access to resources, including safety. And safety to walk on the street is a fundamental right. And Islamophobia exists, and we just want to acknowledge that, and we want to work to eliminate it. We do believe that this is one community, and we have to stand next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, supporting each other. In July this year, there was a national summit on Islamophobia, just chaired by none other than the Prime Minister himself, and CMW attended the summit, and we also conducted our own consultations, community-led consultations on the recommendations for provincial, federal, and municipal levels, all levels. And these recommendations have been compiled by various organizations, including the CMW. We highly recommend that the council read these recommendations, especially, of course, but also the NCCM and the CCMW. Here are some of the recommendations that we have for the municipalities. Number 1 would be to pass street harassment bylaws. We have an active hate reporting system in which we try to help anyone who has experienced racism and xenophobia and Islamophobia, even when they don't identify as Muslim. That is not the criteria for to seek support from the CMW. We've also had a lot of reports of neighbor harassment, street harassment, and we also urge the council to invest in the reporting and documentation of hate. We already do that, but as everybody knows, those funds are limited and for limited periods of time, and those funds will run dry on some date or the other, and then the community depends on these supports. We want this dedicated funding to address Islamophobia, but other forms of hate as well. And we want more neighborhood programming. We believe that hate can be countered when all of us are involved at the very, very basic levels. We'd also request more funding for developing leadership training programs for young Muslim women and youth, and specific funding for anti-Islamophobia awareness campaigns, and also invest in celebrating Islamic History Month and center Muslim voices and narratives. October is Islamic History / Heritage Month, and the CMW has co-organized several programs and events throughout the month, and we'd like to extend this invitation to everybody. Just a quick reminder, what Islamic History Month means is just basically a reminder for everyone to learn about Muslim culture, the significant contributions to Canadian society, and the history of this country itself. I'm running out of time, so I'll go quickly. These are some of the cities that have already declared October as Islamic History Month, and a lot of school districts and universities have also declared it as such. And we really hope that we can see other municipalities in the Waterloo region also declare it at some point in the future. We have collaborated with the Kitchener Public Library, Waterloo Public Library, and the Schneider House Museum to bring these amazing events. We are pretty excited. We've got a lot of very good reception from the public. I'll not go into the details of these events, but we really would like to invite everybody, especially the Lunch and Learns. We believe we have a massive amount of registrations for the Lunch and Learn with Hassan Munir, when he's going to talk about the history of Canadian Muslims in Canada. And we have another one coming up next in the end of October about the role of media and bias. Finally, I'd like to end by just highlighting what the CMW does on its own to counter Islamophobia, racism, and xenophobia. We've already talked to some of the councils about our BATES model, which is bridge building, advocacy, trainings, education, awareness, and services for the community. We honestly believe that we are better and stronger when we are together. So CMW's programs are designed in a way that promotes better understanding between different communities, so that they know each other better, they know each other more intimately. We believe that you do not fear that which you already know. So we hope that through these programs, we can collaboratively work towards a better Waterloo region, especially programs like the Give 30 campaign, in which we raise money for the food banks, Brave Circles, in which we invite difficult questions about Muslims and their faith, but in a civil and respectful manner, and Tea and Tales, again, sharing tea and the stories of our lived experiences with members of the larger community. We have advocacy as part of our mandate. We have 6 town halls with the Waterloo Region Police Services, and not just the Muslim community, but also racialized communities. We had one last week, and we invited all racialized communities of the Waterloo Region to ask direct questions to the WRPS on the new policy of including body cams for the police officers. Chief Brian Larkin was present himself to answer those questions. We also offer consultations with the Waterloo Region School Board, and we also advocate against discriminatory laws like Bill 21. We offer anti-Islamophobia trainings to a host of organizations, including City of Kitchener and several other. We have one, we just did one with the school board today. We have peer workers in 10 different languages who offer bi-weekly sessions on various awareness programs. We have book clubs. We talk about, we bring experts to talk about family law, vaccinations, domestic violence, etc. And finally, this is the most important part. We have an active hate reporting system, and we'd really like the council members to check it out, and the kind of supports that we offer to victims. We are a very small team, but we are trying really hard towards this goal. We offer even SULA, a path-breaking program with our partners, Community Justice Initiatives, in which we offer mediation and restorative justice practices to conflicts stemming out of Islamophobia, racism, and xenophobia. We believe that just sending someone behind the bars is not necessarily the answer to our problem. We are here for the long haul. We are here together, and we need to understand each other better together. So that is all from my side. I hope I have stayed within the time limit.
So Mifrah, I didn't want to be rude and interrupt you, because I think you have a land record for talking, and I would not have cut you off. And it took a couple of seconds or several seconds to get your slide deck up. So thank you very much. And I think you have a future as maybe an auctioneer because you sure can talk fast. If you would consider forwarding to the clerk that slide deck, we will make sure that it gets distributed to all of my colleagues because you were going fast and it looks like there's some very, very interesting events that will be taking place. So take a deep breath and we will, I hope you can entertain a few questions because there's a line up here. Councillor Bravanovich.
Well, thanks very much, Mifrah and Sarah, and great to see both of you again tonight after coming to our council meeting on Monday. Thanks for the presentation, all of the great work that the coalition is doing in the community as well, particularly around the hate reporting system. And I'm just wondering, it's been a fairly innovative approach to dealing with the issue, but also an important one because it allows us to have a better sense of the scope of the problem in our community. I guess my question to you is: Are you getting the support that you need, for it, or is there support that whether it's the region or others in the community could look at to A, further support you, but maybe B, broaden it, its scope?
I would say we have great partners within the region, but funding is always at the back of our mind that what happens when the funding dries out. And we also need some policies which are region-wide, like for example, bylaws. There are only so much that we can do when there are two conflicting neighbors, for example. We can't just barge in and say, you know what, this is wrong. We need some authority sometimes. And it's not if I've missed out anything, but overall, we've got a lot of support from other organizations and even from the region.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
So for the question regarding the hate reporting system right now, it is in place, and the help will be needed when the funds do run dry. But also the outreach, I think that's something that we would really help with, really getting this out to the community, because it's not just the victims, the targets who can report, witnesses who can also report as well, and not just around hate crimes, hate incidents, but also harassment as well. So it's really comprehensive, but we would like absolutely a lot of help getting the word out.
So just in that regard, as you heard, because no doubt you heard the previous presentation and the work that we've been able to accomplish, and we're in the midst of hiring for the role at the region in terms of the lead role that will support this work. But that person's not in place yet. So for tonight, would you be amenable to a motion along the lines of us receiving your report and its recommendations, and staff take a look at them and report back at a future meeting as to how we might be able to support some of the initiatives you're talking about?
Absolutely, and this is something that maybe I don't know how it works. If an issue that impacts many different communities and municipalities, then especially around harassment, street harassment, and neighbor dispute, and our call to look into bylaws and that are constitutional and proportional, but those issues, if it can be done more efficiently together as a committee, I think that would be a route. Otherwise, on its own, obviously, that can be done as well.
Yeah, certainly the kinds of bylaws that you're talking about, often neighbor to neighbor, tend to be more at the municipal level, but it's something that potentially collaboratively working with the various municipalities, we can have a conversation and follow up on that. But Madam Chair, at the appropriate time, I would certainly be prepared to move a recommendation to receive the report and refer it to staff for consideration and follow up.
Okay, so Councillor Bravanovich has moved that. Do I have a seconder? Okay, moved by Councillor Shantz. Thank you. Councillor Kiefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mifrah and forgot the other, Sarah. Thank you for your presentation. It was very important. I know you represent KW Muslim ladies, but are you also representing Cambridge, or are they separate? Or and I'm interested in some of the programs you have, and are there any in Cambridge?
Mifrah, would you like to respond?
Yes, initially we had capacity issues. We were a very small team, but we are expanding with every single day. We have a sister organization called the Muslim Women of Cambridge, and they support us and we support them. But definitely we are trying to build our way also to include Cambridge and other municipalities. As you see, we have addressed all the municipalities here. We want to help anybody in the region and extend our supports wherever we can.
I know the principal of the Islamic school in Cambridge, Mr. Kolkar. He's a wonderful person, and sometimes he runs some programs through the mosque there. And but I look forward to your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kiefer. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you through the chair. I just wanted to certainly bring Sarah into the conversation and to thank the whole team of Coalition of Muslim Women, batting way above their strength in what they do for the community. And it was seen in the literally breathless presentation that Mifrah made. My question, I'll go to Sarah so we let Mifrah catch her breath. Sarah, what else is coming up in the coming months with respect to Coalition of Muslim Women? I realize this is Islamic History Month. We normally have some get-togethers and that, and I know those are sort of off the table now. I wonder if you could just tell us what do you see coming, say, in the next 3 months, perhaps for public events or something like that?
Well, for the Together Against Islamophobia program, if Mifrah is the coordinator, we have Brave Circles next month in November, which invites, she was saying, we invite controversial questions and politically incorrect questions around Islam and Muslims. So that's in November. We have a town hall in December with the police, our third town hall. We have trainings that are that are particular to organizations, but those would be the two main, if I'm not mistaken. Mifrah, is there anything else that we have planned for?
I think we're still recovering from the events that we have organized for October.
And I would remind council that when we get the slide deck, there were several slides that did talk about upcoming events. Councillor Jaworski, do you have any other question?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Galloway.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks to Mifrah and Sarah for the presentation. It's certainly very welcome what the coalition has been doing over the last number of years, particularly. And I want to note for the members of council that Sarah is also a member of the Crime Prevention Council, and for quite a number of years now, and is one of our key resources in terms of anti-racism work that the Crime Prevention Council does, and of course Islamophobia specifically. So appreciate the work that Sarah does on behalf of the region for the Crime Prevention Council, but certainly also in regards to the coalition. And I just wanted to thank you for clearing me on the wait list for Friday's Lunch and Learn with Sam Munir, Councillor Jaworski, hosted by the Waterloo Public Library. The Lunch and Learn at noon on Friday. I'm looking forward to the topic of the history of Muslims in Canada.
And just to underscore that Councillor Galloway is looking for really underscore the learn part. The lunch is just extra, right?
Yeah, the lunch you provide yourself, apparently.
Thank you. Councillor Jowett.
Through the chair, I've got it now. So I just wanted to say I love grassroots champions. I mean, there's so much that gets done, and it gets done so intelligently and with so much heart. And that's what I saw in those slides as quickly as you were able to speak, which was even just as joyous because we were able to still harness and capture what you're trying to tell us. So I thought that was great. I was just wondering, and because of the connectivity into Waterloo Region Crime Prevention Council, and maybe you can answer this. I think about what I was learning when I was there on community justice initiatives, and is there more work to be done on specifically the hate crimes end of things? and I guess it would depend on the severity, certainly, and the comfort level of the participants. But is there more that can be done in showing people the impact they have on others, the actual hurt, and maybe even some form of, restitution to someone that they've hurt? Like, are there some things being done there, or are there some things we can sort of help support in that realm?
Thank you for question. So currently Crime Prevention Council is, I would say, not looking into it, but absolutely there's so much work that needs to be done, really for visible Muslim women. This street harassment is an issue that we face, like all of us have faced this in not at least once, if not multiple times. Kids in students, Muslim students, we just had a presentation, we had training at the school board, and Muslim kids face bullying, anti-Muslim bullying consistently, not just by other students, but by the teachers themselves as well. And, that's there, and the teachers were, and the administrators who were present, they were agreeing with us that they've seen this. Neighbor dispute is something that we see consistently come up as an issue, and especially Islamophobic and racist issues. So there's much work that absolutely needs to be done, and at many different levels. So at the federal level, and the summit that was held, there were recommendations by national advocacy groups as well as from us to to make changes at the federal, provincial, municipal levels, and there's work that needs to be done for sure.
Well, thank you. We're lucky to have you guys. We really are.
Mifrah, do you want to add something?
Yes, actually our colleagues at CGI are trying to explore ways in which Sulah and mediation can be used for hate crimes, like the diversionary measures that are often offered by the Crown. We're thinking of instead of just asking somebody to do an anger management course, for example, or community service, why not explore Sulah, in which the harm doer is brought face to face with the impact that they're creating. So they are talking to certain Crown attorneys to include Sulah as one of the options, but it's still in its very initial stages.
Well, I can't wait to see where that goes. I really do think that that's a good tool for sure. So thank you to both of you.
Councillor McGarry.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to the delegations. I'm always excited when I see the work that you're doing. I wanted to echo my colleague, Councillor Galloway's comments about the work that has been done, certainly by Sarah in particular, through the issues of Islamophobia and how we work together at Crime Prevention Council with all the other member organizations in order to try and combat it. I also work quite closely with the Cambridge Muslim women as well, and appreciate the work that we do. We've talked a lot about how we get government support for this. I also understand that a lot of the deep-seated change that we need really comes from the personal and the individual levels. I would have to say, since I moved here in Cambridge in 1988, I've seen a huge change and far more acceptance of a diverse population than when I moved here. I think we're moving the needle. It's never fast enough, never far enough. But would you say that you feel that you're making some progress here in the one-on-one gentle conversations that you're having with our community members?
Thank you for that question, Councillor McGarry. So, we've been doing this work for 10 years. The thing is that we don't have, and I agree that, there's at the individual level, we are making progress, and but the thing is that we are not documenting, and we are not tracking this. So especially maybe around, with this hate reporting system that we have, reportinghate.ca, this will help us track and do that, longitudinal sort of study of where we are at, where we are going, how it, what is the impact. And so that's really important. There's, we know that, this kind of work has to be done. And, we feel like the vigil that we had, there were 800 people who attended online. So there's a lot of goodwill, absolutely. But still, obviously, you need that change as well.
Thank you, and if I could just follow up, Madam Chair, and just say thank you so much for this. And anything, I won't put words in my colleague's mouth, but I'm pretty sure all of us are here to assist in whatever way you feel that we can help to lead this work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you, Sarah and Mifrah. And if you had come together, you would have had longer, and Mifrah would not have had to speak so quickly, but you got it all in. There is no report to accompany this, so I'm just going to go back to Councillor Bravanovich and Councillor Shantz and confirm that it would be the contents of this slide deck that would be referred to regional staff for action.
That's correct, Chair Redman.
Okay. Thank you very much. I see no more speakers, so please use your icons to vote yes or no for this to be referred to staff. That is carried, colleagues. Sarah and Mifrah, thank you very much for attending.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
We'll now have a motion. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meetings as listed. Before I call for a mover and a seconder, are there any comments on these minutes? It's A through G. Seeing none, could I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Shantz. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. That is carried, colleagues. The next agenda item is a council information package. Wednesday, October the 13th, 2021, was distributed electronically. It was for your information. Are there any questions or any issue anyone would like to pull out? Seeing none, I would now entertain a motion to go into the committee of the whole. If I could have a mover, moved by Councillor McGarry, seconded by Councillor Galloway. All those in favor, please vote using your yes or no. Shouldn't assume you're all in favor. I'll say we are now in committee of the whole. The next agenda item is considering reports or finance reports. It's A through N. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Dyer on item L, I believe it is. It's on the keypads and the replacement of those. And it seems certainly to be within budget, and that it just seems to be premature at this time to be replacing keypads being worn out already. I just wondered if there's more information to know on that of why there's a need for replacement.
Mr. Dyer.
Yes, thank you for the question. And through you, Madam Chair, I can offer some additional information. The components that are being replaced were originally acquired back in 2015. The ticket vending machines were built in 2016 and installed in 2018, and of course came into revenue in June of 2019. And so even though they've only been in service for maybe 28 months or so, the life cycle of the technology actually predates 2015. And so with some recent security updates, there is a need to replace the units in order to accommodate those important security improvements. So I would characterize this as it's not so much that the units are worn out, it's that we need to update them in order to get the benefits of the new technology and security updates. And this is in part to ensure that the region continues to meet payment card industry standards. I hope that's helpful.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Dyer.
Thank you very much. Councillor Strickland.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'd like to move the finance reports.
Okay, moved by Councillor Strickland, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. That is carried, colleagues. Thank you. The next agenda item is committee reports. It's Committee of the Whole attached and marked, and it's 1 through 8. If I could have a mover. Okay, we're going to take these in 1 through 8, except for item 3, because that is the one that Councillor Clark has conflict on. So all of the Committee of the Whole consolidated reports except number 3. Could I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Verbanovich. Please vote. That is carried. And then a mover for item 3. Moved by Councillor Galloway, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. That is carried. Thank you, colleagues. Sorry. We're going very fast. Okay, so now we are at Chief Administrative Officer report, Advancing Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Update. And would you like to kick this off, Mr. Lochner?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to start my report by thanking Maedith and Donna, who were here earlier, as well as the entire Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group, for their recommendations and their wisdom, advice, and guidance on this journey. I recognize that the working group is advisory to council, and do thank them for the recommendations that they provided tonight. At the same time, I do want to say that they've worked alongside regional staff this year on a number of different initiatives, and I really appreciate the support that they've provided us. And again, the dialogue and relationship building. We wouldn't be here today if it weren't for their willingness to share their experiences and expertise with us at the staff level. This has not been easy work. I've greatly valued the open, honest, and authentic conversations that have helped shape the region's approach to this important work. Tonight, I'm joined by a number of my colleagues, Fawzia Beg, Equity and Anti-Racism Advisor, and Connie McDonald, Chief Strategy and Communications Officer, to provide an update on the region's work to advance equity, diversity, and inclusion. I want to start by just reflecting on the time when I entered into the region. I recall George Floyd and the murder of George Floyd. I recall marches in the streets when I think Councillor Jaworski spoke of the thousands of people in this community who rose up and said something needs to change. When I joined the region at the end of the summer, I asked to meet with our internal equity team, and ended up meeting with one individual, Sanjay, and Sanjay was the team. And I was a little surprised that one person was tasked with such an enormous amount of work, an incredibly important work. I do also want to acknowledge that none of this work can be done by one person, nor has it been done. The work that Thomas Schmidt and Rod Regier have done to, for example, create relationships and strong relationships with the Mississaugas of the Credit and Six Nations. It took a long time to build trust, and as well as tangible actions. I made the decision very early on to second Sanjay to the CEO's office and asked Sanjay, we need some help, and was privileged enough to bring 3 other individuals in to work alongside me to create the region's first EDI team, to provide advice and guidance to me and colleagues across the organization as we embarked on the next steps of our journey inside the region. This wouldn't have been possible without Council's strong support, and the motion passed last June, again, long before I got here. And the Maedith and Donna both spoke to that earlier today. Despite being an interim team, these individuals moved the region forward in immeasurable ways, and I want to thank Sanjay, who's now with the City of Waterloo, and doing great work there. Sophia, who has returned to her home in community services, Fawzia, who you'll hear in a moment, and Cynthia, who presented at the last meeting on reconciliation, for taking a risk and and starting this work in the region. We're now working to build the permanent team. We actually just welcomed our first permanent member to the team, Paulina, who's joined us as an Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator. Paulina has been with the region for 4 years in various roles, including community engagement with the Immigration Partnership, and most recently supporting the work of the vaccine bus with outreach and engagement. And I know Council is very aware of the progress in that area. We're currently recruiting for a director and have formally formed the region's Office of Reconciliation and Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion in the CO's office. I recognize tonight that there was a recommendation for another director, so certainly we'll take that under advisement and take those recommendations seriously and take a look at the potential for creating a second role. We're fortunate, as I said, to have Cynthia Martin, Reconciliation and Indigenous Initiative Advisor, on secondment for the next 2 years, and have plans to add additional roles to support the team. This office will provide overarching strategic leadership and work alongside the community to address systemic racism and advance equity and reconciliation to improve the lives of the 630,000 residents of Waterloo region, as Maedith and Donna so eloquently spoke of earlier tonight. This includes development and implementation of an anti-racism and equity plan for the region, as directed by Council, as well as a reconciliation action plan for the region in partnership with Indigenous communities and the area municipalities. We're also adding equity-focused roles across the organization, embedding expertise and lived experience across departments to help drive implementation. And again, earlier tonight, we heard how important that was. As the team is formed, we'll provide another update to Council on planning and engagement. And while tonight we talk about the progress that has been made, it's important to acknowledge that we have a long way to go. We're just at the beginning, and we have a lot of listening, a lot of learning, a lot of acting to undertake. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Fazia, who will speak a bit more about the work of the team over the past year. Fazia, over to you.
Thank you, Bruce, and good evening, Council and guests. The Reconciliation, Equity, and Diversity Inclusion team is new and still in its early formation, but to me has already demonstrated the value it brings to the region's goal of building a world-class community. Though this team has been small, we've been able to take on many difficult priorities. You've already received an update on the reconciliation work presented by my colleague, Cynthia Martin and Connie McDonald a few weeks ago, that shared the incredible work already accomplished in laying the foundation for the region's reconciliation approach. Today, I will highlight some of the work that the READY team has been busy supporting, amplifying, and leading towards EDI within the region. One of the accomplishments I'd like to share is related to the staff EDI group that was formed over the last year. We know that in order for us to serve our residents well, we need to have a healthy workplace and culture. The EDI staff group has contributed to building a more positive work environment. This is a group of passionate staff who are committed to self-learning and the growth of the region in areas of EDI, and has already organized many first-time events and acknowledgements. The EDI staff group provides a brave space for difficult and necessary conversations to move EDI and anti-racism forward within the region. I have seen more progress in the last year in workplace culture because of this group than I've seen in over a decade working at the region. I've experienced shifts from seeing staff as employee only to seeing staff as their whole self and embracing these identities in the workplace and engaging in meaningful conversations. We know that not everyone's experiences are the same, but we are working on shifting the norms and culture from othering to belonging. We are still early on this journey, but the commitment is there. The Community Engagement Working Group has been another focus for the READY team, the Reconciliation, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion team. This group was formed to ensure that an equity lens was central to Waterloo Region's vaccine rollout. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the working group members for their leadership, dedication, and commitment to moving this work forward. Some members joined for different parts of the journey, but all made an impact towards the goals of the group. Members included Maedith, Radlein, and Tammy Webster, who are also Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group representatives, Cynthia Martin, Deb Rubrick, Dave Remy, Ismail Mohammed, Moses Tatua, Neb Zachariah, Chris McAvoy, Lori Fiosi, and Brad Berg. Right from the start, the working group acknowledged that the current model of service delivery wasn't going to be enough and would continue to underserve many in our community who face barriers in accessing services, and that we needed to apply an anti-racism lens, working with community to provide service and information that would overcome these existing gaps. Over the course of the rollout, we actively worked to remove systemic barriers, facilitated joint planning, engaged in shared leadership to produce positive impacts for and within communities. Our approach was to first engage, listen, learn, and then to co-plan to provide information and culturally appropriate vaccination clinics for our priority communities and neighborhoods. The success of this work can be attributed to the collective hands of community leaders who identified, advocated, led, and took action to ensure that the needs of communities and neighborhoods were reflected in this rollout. I know for myself, I learned a lot from the difficult conversations this space allowed us to have and the challenges overcome as a result of the commitment to do things differently and center the voice of community. The group formed recommendations, some of which you've already heard discussed today, for the region's continued work towards reconciliation and EDI beyond vaccine rollout. I will take these lessons forward in the work that the READY office does and work with leaders and staff of the region to embed this into our way of working ahead. I will now turn it over to Connie to share some more about the work of the team today.
Thank you, Fazia. At the region, we're committed to embedding reconciliation and advancing equity, diversity, inclusion into everything that we do. This is why, from a strategy perspective, we have made advancing this work a core part of the region's annual planning process. So as we developed our plan for next year, the READY team met with each senior leader at the region. They shared feedback from the community and reviewed calls to action related to their area of service delivery. This has helped to form some of the foundational ways that we will work to improve equity in regional service delivery next. The creation of the team, the READY team, and many of the initiatives to advance EDI are possible as a direct result of Council investing $5 million this year and $10 million next year and beyond to transform regional services to improve the social and economic health and well-being of Indigenous, Black, racialized, and other marginalized community members. A recent example of this was the launch of the region's new rent assistance program, designed specifically to support 200 families from these traditionally underrepresented and underserved communities. Other examples include investing in the growth of community gardens to increase food security and sovereignty, and investing in the expansion of peer-related supports, something that we have learned has been incredibly important through the vaccine rollout and COVID response. Additional exciting announcements are still to come in affordable housing, access to childcare, and more. We also look forward to continuing to engage and work with the community in the coming year. As Bruce shared, we are only at the beginning and have much work to do as we listen, learn, and act on community feedback. Another important equity initiative has been the process to develop the region's community safety and well-being plan. One of the key learnings from the community engagement working group through the vaccine rollout was the importance of representation at the decision-making level. In designing the process for the community safety and well-being plan, the region is required to engage with system leaders to develop the plan. The reality is, when you look at the makeup of those system leaders, it does not reflect the diversity of our community. So we decided to do something a bit different and designed a steering committee with community leaders and representatives from Indigenous, Black, and racialized communities to guide the development of the plan at the governance level. The advisory committee then of system leaders actually reports into that steering committee and are tasked with supporting the community in bringing the vision to life. Part of the great wisdom of this group, and I have to particularly acknowledge Donna, Dubie, and Fazia Mazar from the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group, has been to focus the plan on the people rather than the systems or sectors or issues we are trying to address. This means that we will have a unique made in Waterloo region approach to community safety and well-being planning that won't look a lot like a government template, but will reflect a vision for what a safe and well community could be. While this work starts with the plan and framework, the outcome will evolve, change, and grow along with the community. The plan is not meant to be a static document, but a vision for creating a community that addresses the root causes of how to create a safe and well community for all and actively works together. The engagement in the development of this vision continues. I'm incredibly pleased that Fawzia Bag is leading the community engagement with the same approach that was taken in the vaccine rollout, working alongside community leaders to inform the development of the plan. And I look forward to bringing more information in a future update to Council on the development of our community safety and wellbeing plan. Thank you, and I will now turn it back over to Bruce for closing remarks.
Just thanks very much, Fawzia and Connie. Really appreciate it. That's the conclusion. I don't have anything more to say. Connie and Fawzia said it very well. We're happy to take questions, Madam Chair.
I think what I heard that excites me the most isn't what you've done, but the fact that there's more to come. I think that's so exciting. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report. I appreciate that having heard one aspect of the recommendations today, you may be doing some thinking about the staffing. I just want to offer a comment that I also think that the group's comments around reporting structure seem very valid to me. And I hope that would be also something that you would think about. And I have a request, which is more along the lines of this reporting structure. There's so much going on, and I do appreciate these updates. I would find it really helpful, though, if I could sort of visualize more clearly what the different groups are doing and who they're reporting to, and how the groups are reporting in. There's so much happening that I tend to get a little confused about, well, who are we talking about now, and what group is this now? If somebody doesn't mind sort of taking an Excel sheet or something like that, just I would personally find that very helpful, just to understand how these groups all interact.
I see nodding heads. Is that something, Mr. Lochner, you'll take away? Okay, well, thank you for this great news report. There's just a real theme tonight, and it very much excites me for this shared future and this path that we're all treading together. So that is just, we're just receiving that. So thank you very much for that update, Connie, Fawzia, and Bruce. Next, I have no report, but Regional Clerk has a revised 2022 schedule of council meetings. Clerk, do you want to speak to it?
Thanks, Chair. This was just with the amendments that were brought forward at the last council meeting from Councillor Urbanovic with the change to the inaugural meeting. We sent that out to council in advance of the meeting, and there was also a request from Councillor Foxon just to put the Roma dates on it, so we'll include that as well. So thanks very much, Council.
Thank you very much. I see no questions. Can I have a mover and a seconder to vote on the recommendation for the revised report for the schedule? Moved by Councillor McGarry, seconded by Councillor Kiefer. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. That is carried, colleagues. Thank you. Other matters under the Committee of the Whole, the Museum Unzipped Rolling Stones Exhibition and Festival. I believe Helen Chimiri Russell is here to answer questions if there are any. Oh, Rod is here. Not to be mistaken or confused. Oh, there's Helen. Thank you very much. Do you want to make any comments, or should we just go to questions? We'll go to questions. Okay, everybody knows what the recommendation is. One-time marketing grant of $100,000 in 2021. Councillor Urbanovic.
Thank you, Chair Redman. So just prior to council, I did email council, and it's my understanding that the museum folks learned about this through the media yesterday, and unfortunately had other commitments and weren't able to be at council this evening in order to speak to this. So I would like to move deferral on this issue to special council on November the 9th so that they would have an opportunity to come and speak to this recommendation. If that doesn't carry, then I will be looking to move a contrary motion to see us actually take the grant, and would like to speak to it at that point in time.
Okay, so there's a motion to defer. Is there a seconder? Councillor Harris. Okay, on the motion to defer, Councillor Strickland.
I would support the motion to defer, but I would also support the $100,000 grant. So I don't know where the rest of council's mind is at, and we've been at this for a long time today since budget. So maybe deferral is the more prudent way to go, but I certainly would like to signal my support for making the grant. This is, I think it's a tremendous opportunity, a fantastic exhibit for our entire region, and I would support the $100,000 for marketing. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. And through you, the chair, do we have anyone who can tell me where, has the funds been budgeted? And if not, where will the funds come from?
Mr. Dyer, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the grant has not been budgeted for. There isn't a provision for this in either the operating or the capital budget in 2021. If council desired to provide the grant, then we would make the grant out of the cultural services operating budget and report it as a variance.
And there is funds in the cultural budget?
Well, I would say like not specifically for this item, no. And so it would be an unbudgeted grant charged against the cultural services operating budget.
Which has sufficient funds to cover it?
I don't have the figures in front of me. I would suspect that, you know, within the region's overall budget, that there would be sufficient funds.
Okay, so that it's not going to cause us a deficit that you're aware of?
It's unlikely to cause us a deficit.
Thank you.
Broader, Helen, do either of you want to talk about the source of possible source of funding, or has Craig covered it off?
I think Craig has covered it off. We don't have an allocation, and it would just simply be accounted for inside of our budget as a variance.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jowett.
Thank you, Chair Redman. So question to, I think Helen probably is best to answer this. So do we have a report of the original allocations and then the lack thereof based on COVID? Because I know that the Scottish Festival for 3 years running now hasn't received any grants at all. And so I know that that's 60,000. So what I'm saying is, can we get a report back from staff that shows what original allocations we had, what has not been pushed out through as a result of COVID, and look at it from that perspective?
Helen?
Sure, I can answer that one actually quite easily, that all allocated grant funding has gone out the door. And you're right, there's been 2 years that the Scottish Festival has not received a grant. They withdrew their application, but that money was reallocated by the Economic Development Committee.
Right, so is it prudent for us to get a report of the allocations just to remind us, or?
Sure, we can do that.
Well, just because it's already, I don't know, if we get the deferral, I guess is probably. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you. Councillor Strickland.
Thank you. I just would add that, you know, occasionally when we fund these grants one time, we fund them out of the tax rate stabilization fund. So I think if council is willing to fund it, $100,000 isn't going to, you know, break the bank, so to speak. We could, as a variance within the cultural services or one time on a tax rate stabilization, we run a small surplus every year, which will likely be the case this year. That won't have an overly onerous effect on that. So for $100,000, I think we can find lots of ways to fund it.
Thank you. Councillor Galloway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not worried about the $100,000 in terms of where we would find it. I think that we could do. I am concerned, however, on how efficiently this money could be spent. The event is actually next month, and this money is for marketing, which I'm assuming has long been taking place. So I don't know if Helen can answer this question or not, but how does our $100,000 actually, I mean, is it really for marketing, or is it really just for general support of the?
So, Councillor Galloway, I think this is a really valid question. I think it's an important discussion, but we're talking about the deferral. This is a discussion we could have on the 9th, so perhaps Helen can take that under advisement,
Okay.
Unless you want to speak to the deferral.
No, we can discuss that on the 9th. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Bravanovich, do you have one last word before we take the vote?
No, that's fine.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that this be deferred until November the 9th. That is a committee of the whole day, but we could have a special council meeting. Please use your icons to vote yes or no on the deferral. That is carried. Councillor Galloway, are you voting with your hand, or did you want to speak?
No, that was a legacy.
Okay, thank you. I will now entertain a motion for the committee of the whole to rise and council to resume. If I could have a mover and a move by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor McGarry. All those in favor, or would you please use your icons to vote? You can vote no if you want, I guess. That is carried. I now entertain a motion to adopt the proceedings of the committee of the whole, moved by Councillor Nowak, seconded by Councillor Jowett. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. That is carried, colleagues. I would now entertain a motion for council to adopt the proceedings. We just did that one. Any motions? Any notices of motion? Any unfinished business? Other business? Questions? Why are we still here, right? I would now entertain a motion to enact the bylaws first, second, and third readings, moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Clark. Please use your icons to vote. So, colleagues, this will be the most controversial vote of the night. Is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, Councillor Bravanovich voting no. Councillor Armstrong is moving it with two hands. Councillor Foxton is joining. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. That is carried. Thank you, colleagues. Great meeting, great discussion, and I think really bodes well for our future as we move forward together representing this community. Everybody have a great night.
Have a great night, everyone.